How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your November horoscope for 2018 for Taurus. How is it going, Taurus? Well, this month is going to be quite everywhere for you, and you know you don't like that, but that's okay, because to start the month off, November 6th, we have Uranus retrograding back into Aries. Thank God Uranus is out of your guys' first house. Uranus has been there for a couple months now. Things have been explosive. Things have been shaky. They've been extreme up and down. And we all know that you guys don't like that. So thank God Uranus is going back into Aries, going back into your 12th house where it's been for the past 7 years. And as Uranus goes back into there and retrogrades and then goes direct, this is kind of like one final last like subconscious breakthrough and realizing your power. And I know that sounds very like, I guess you could say not super. It could be that's very vague. But the thing is with Uranus is that it's not a personable planet. It's it's out there, but it has a lot of sporadic charges of energy. And as Uranus goes into your 12th house of repressed areas of your subconscious and things like that, Uranus is going to try to find any type of way to really get you to go like, hey, what do you need to realize? Hey, what do you need to what do you need to realize about yourself and what you can really do? And then as Uranus goes back into Taurus, then it's going to be shaking you up and kind of changing who you are. Also on November 6th, we have the North Node moving into Cancer. So the North Node will start to go into your third house. The North and the South Node have been in your fourth and your 10th house, where you've been kind of shying away from the idea of being, so structured and kind of even at times isolated and differentiating yourself with other people, especially in your career. And the North Node in Leo has been helping you really focus on getting centered in your power and your light and having more heart and energy to wear, helping you kind of get things situated with your family as well. As the North Node ingresses into Cancer and it's in your third house, where the third house is about, writing, understanding, language, your immediate environment, your siblings. It also has a lot to do with what you kind of do. Like the first house is who you are, the second house is what you have, and the third house is how you use it. So as the North Node, where we're talking about the dragon's head, where we're talking about consuming things, the direction we want to go in, it's kind of like our soul's urge, our soul's calling, like that sense of direction, that sense of urgency is very much alive in the North Node. And as it ingresses into Cancer, we're talking about, Cancer things. We're talking about trust. We're talking about nurturing. We're talking about protection. We're talking about really expressing feeling. And we're really talking about what's going on the inside and how must we not only shell ourselves off on the outside and protect ourselves, but how can we learn to trust and bring things in. And as the North Node goes to your whole sign third house, goes into Cancer, this is really about utilizing what trust you have, utilizing the protection, the emotional strength that you have, and being able to relate, being able to nurture, being able to give, and being able to protect. This is where you're going to start wanting to go, and this is going to be things around siblings, around your immediate environment, around writing, around speaking, and being very clear with that. So this is going to be a pretty big, mood shift, I guess you could say. What else is happening? The next day, on November 7th, also, before I get to that, the North Node's going to be in Cancer for like a year and a half while the eclipses move over there. I didn't really explain that, but yeah, we'll be talking about that for a long time. Anyway, the next day, we have Jupiter in... Oh, hold on. Before that, we have the new moon in Scorpio on November 7th. And so as you've had this Venus retrograde in Scorpio in your 7th house, you've been really looking at what relationships look like, what are you holding on to, what needs to get let go of, what's the nasty, ugly stuff that's there. This new moon in Scorpio is kind of allowing you to give yourself the space to not necessarily start fresh in this area, but to see things for how they are and have a new focus, a new perception of things. And this is going to be kind of clearing out that 7th house stuff. Jupiter's been there for the past years, so relationships, for the most part have been good, but also a little bit with Venus's retrograde right there, you've been having to really reevaluate your relationships and where you're kind of putting your emotional energy and what you want. This new moon's kind of clearing all of that out and helping you kind of ease into the new Scorpio 7th house feel. The next day, on November 8th, we have Jupiter ingressing into Sagittarius. And like I just said, Jupiter's been in Scorpio for the past year. He's been in your 7th house. Relationships have been good, but it's also bringing up a bunch of stuff. Well, as Jupiter moves into Sag in your 8th house, the focus starts to come towards what do these other people have in your life? What are people giving to you? What are you giving to other people? The eighth house has to do with inheritances, has to deal with death, sex, rebirth, all the modern stuff. It does have a lot to do with what other people have, though. And as Jupiter goes into Sagittarius and its domicile sign where it's really happy, and it's going into your eighth house, this is going to be kind of a pretty nice eighth house experience. Usually the eighth house really sucks, but while Jupiter's in there and he's in his home sign, this is going to be really good for things like, dealing with other people, dealing with more of the darker stuff. The eighth house is really symbolic of change and purging and kind of like, boiling moments, basically. And so as Jupiter goes through there, it's kind of like being able to get through these moments, being able to get through this darker stuff, being able to get through issues causing that kind of come out with other people. It's going to make this a lot easier to work with. And it's going to be mostly a little bit, I shouldn't say mostly, it's going to be a pretty positive experience of the eighth house. So that is a good thing. Moving on to November 9th, we have Mars trining Venus. While Mars is in Aquarius in your 10th house and Venus is in Libra in your 6th house, Venus will still be retrograde, but she'll be back in her domicile in Libra in your 6th house, where you're starting to get the whole idea of service, of employment, of your habits and your routine, as well as things kind of like things that break and fall apart. You're starting to get a better grip on that, starting to really understand where you need to be placing your value in terms of habits, routine, consistency, and your sense of service. And it's trining the Mars in Aquarius, where Mars in Aquarius has been kind of like working on your 10th house, working on your career, working on where you want to go and what you want to kind of do. And this is going to be very beneficial with establishing a new sense of understanding and value of where you could put yourself and understanding more of where you want to put yourself. So this is all good news. So then moving forward on November 14th, we have Mercury squaring Neptune as it stations retrograde. Neptune's in your guys' 11th house right now, so that's not the biggest deal in the world, but Neptune is putting a little bit of a blur, putting a little bit of confusion around friendships and kind of connecting to groups and stuff like that. As Mercury stations retrograde, squaring Neptune in your 8th house in Sagittarius, this is kind of reevaluating, like, who you're kind of associating yourself with. Maybe getting some news that was kind of like, oh, that's not exactly what I want to associate with. That's not what I really... It's kind of changing your mindset about what these people in your life, your friends or people that you're relating to, what are they bringing to you, and is that good? Is whatever they're giving to you and whatever you're giving to them, is it bringing you in the direction that you want to go, or are things getting kind of lost in translation? So this Mercury retrograde, you need to be very clear about what is being given and received from other people. I wouldn't say, a lot of people think Mercury retrograde, don't sign paperwork, don't do anything crazy. It's like, well, it's not that. This Mercury retrograde is going to be a little bit better than usual because we are talking about Jupiter right now. Jupiter is going to be really involved in this, but it is Mercury in detriment. Excuse me. It is in the 8th house. It's just be very, very aware of what is being said, of what is being brought to you, and just, cross all your T's, dot all your I's. Just be very clear and aware of what's going on. Moving forward on November 16th, we have Venus going direct, finally, thank God. She's been retrograde in your guys' 7th house. It's been a rough one. You've learned a lot, you've seen a lot, you've grown a lot. But as she goes direct in Libra in your 6th house, it's time to start really taking care of yourself and putting what you need to be putting first. This is going to be putting more love into your routine, putting more of the nicer things that you want to enjoy, and really understanding where you can put your value in order to kind of capitalize on that in your life. Then on November 16th as well, Mars will move into Pisces, where it will enter your 11th house. The 11th house is all, again, about friendships, community, groups, philanthropic. I can't say that word. I literally just said it too. Anyway, it's about doing something good. And as Mars goes into your 11th house in Pisces, Mars wants to achieve, he wants to do, he wants to go. And in Pisces, it's kind of like, playing, having weird psychology with someone and like manipulating their mind. And the Mars warrior's like, well, where do I want to go? Why am I fighting? And the Mars, warrior ends up taking acid and he's like super chill and just doesn't want to have war anymore. That's like Mars in Pisces. As he enters your 11th house, this is where we're going to start looking at friendships and start looking at where you connect yourself and start looking at, well, why am I connecting myself here, and where do I need to start really separating myself from people, especially people that aren't really giving you clarity, people that aren't clear, people that are that you're associating with that don't have boundaries, that's going to be a big thing. Mars is going to have you kind of look at, what problems are kind of coming up in that and where you need to separate yourself in terms of friendships or in terms of groups of people that you're hanging out with. But this is a temporary thing. It is going to have a lot to do with Jupiter being in your 8th house. So just, that's what I'm saying. Anyway, November 17th, the next day, Mercury will go retrograde. And as Mercury goes retrograde in your 8th house, again, this is reevaluating, relooking at things. Don't get too lost. Things can go really, really fast because it's all happening really fast because Jupiter's going to be right there expanding all of this. As Mercury retrogrades, just things are going to go fast. Make sure you're paying attention to the whole story and the whole thing, and take the time that you need to really evaluate, okay, what is being brought to me? What am I having to give to other people? What are other people's resources at the time? It's going to involve a lot of change in mindset on a dramatic level because this is the 8th house. It is going to be a little bit, spooky to say. So just be prepared for this Mercury retrograde to be both good, but you must be very aware of what's going on, and you'll start to see more of, what issues can arise. So just be clear. Then on November 19th, Mars squares Jupiter, where Mars is again in your 11th house, wanting to cut, wanting to tie, wanting to really question, who it's involving itself with. Jupiter is going to be in your 8th house, where it's Jupiter wants other people to give you more things, but I think you're just going to start to realize, okay, who's giving you more and who's not giving you more? Where are the boundaries? Where are the limits? What do you believe about all this? And it's just going to be a big question of who you involve yourself with and who you associate yourself with, and kind of learning to I don't want to say pick and choose your battles, but it's more of like a philosophical type ordeal rather than, you need to eliminate your friends. It's more of like, what do you believe about your friends, and what do you believe about the worth that they need to bring to you and the worth that you need to bring to them? And then after that, we have the Sun moving into Sagittarius on November 22nd. The Sun's going to be going in your 8th house. This whole area of your life is going to be brought to light. Things are going to be a lot more clear. This is where all the emphasis is going to be at, is all this Mercury retrograde and Jupiter and Sag in your 8th house. So that's really the only thing. But immediately on that day, we have the full moon in Gemini, where the full moon in Gemini is looking at, okay, let's bring the light to what do you have? Where's your money at? What do you own and what do you possess? And as the Sun is in Sagittarius, Jupiter's in Sagittarius, Mercury's retrograde in Sagittarius, all in your 8th house, this comes down to, okay, what other people are giving you stuff. What are you starting to own? What are you starting to possess? What are you starting to become more clear about and really be aware of? This is going to bring a lot of awareness to what you possess as far as money, as far as, anything that you can really own that's tangible. And Jupiter, the Sun, and Mercury retrograde are just bringing a lot of stuff from other people. So expect kind of, I don't want to say, not like a financial windfall maybe for you, but it's kind of like things can kind of just be coming to you all at once. A lot of like physical stuff, people can just be giving you those things. So be very aware of that. I wouldn't say that's a bad thing at all, but this full moon is going to be really highlighted at look what you have. Then on November 25th, we have the Sun conjuncting Jupiter at 3 degrees. And this is also going to be really good. When we have the Sun-Jupiter day, this is starting the new fresh Jupiter cycle of Jupiter and Sag. This is going to be good for you in your 8th house, where things are going to be brought to you, things are going to be realized, change is going to be involved, but it's going to be a very fun and exciting and really just an adventurous learning experience. So that's good news. That's going to be exciting. And that's going to actually last till the next day at 4 degrees because they stay together basically for a whole degree. Then after that, we have Sun-Mercury conjunction when Mercury goes Cazimi in Sagittarius. This is going to be kind of realizing a little bit more of what the whole Mercury thing is, what the whole retrograde is about. This is when you want to be more aware than like kind of ever what's going on. You may find a little bit more of the story being unraveled as Mercury goes Cazimi. Also on the same day though, Mercury conjuncts Jupiter. So as Mercury retrogrades goes Cazimi, is also going to be right on top of Jupiter as well, where you're going to be like, oh, well, maybe this is actually a good thing. Oh, well, maybe this is actually going to be beneficial because Jupiter is going to be going to be there to really help alleviate all of the stuff, all of the Mercury and retrograde nonsense. The last thing actually is on November 30th, we have Venus opposing Uranus in Aries and Libra rather than Scorpio and Taurus like we have been seeing. So we see this Venus and Uranus opposition go from your 1st and 7th to your 12th and your 6th. And this is a pretty big deal because as Uranus is in your 12th house, where it's kind of like wanting you to at any moment explode with power and just do your own thing and give you all of that self-empowerment stuff, or out of nowhere a hidden enemy can come up, or all of a sudden you have a crazy dream or whatever. As Venus is at the last degrees of Libra in your 6th house, it really is about finding that place of power and being able to express it in that Venusian way of like, I'm capable of doing this, but I'm going to do it with ease. I'm going to do it with grace. I'm going to do it with comfort. And, you know, you guys are Taurus risings or Taurus suns. You guys are very much relatable to Venus. I think this Uranus in Aries, though, is really going to kind of give you the pop off, the little spark that you need for that Venus in Libra stuff in your 6th house to really kind of manifest and come to fruition. And then on November 30th, Mercury will retrograde back into Scorpio, back into your 7th house. And this is where it's going to be, okay, now how do I communicate and express what I need to express within relationships? What do I need to say? What is the truth that you need to speak out? And that's going to be the big thing with this Mercury retrograde, is you kind of look at, okay, you know, how am I relating to people? What's going too fast? What do I really believe? What's all this nonsense stuff? As Mercury comes back into the 7th house in Scorpio, this is going to be a big time for you to realize, what do you need to express to people? And what is that truth? What is that raw, clear, defined image that you need to say and that you need to get off your chest? So that's what November's looking like for you guys. I think it's going to be a very interesting month comparative to what the past couple months have been, but I think it is going to be exciting just because of how much change is happening. So thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing. I love every single one of you, and I will be seeing you for your next month's horoscope.